the fact that Trump got elected and that we should be demoralized, but instead that our message should be exactly the opposite, that look at the spirit of rebellion amongst young people. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of students from high schools and colleges have already walked out and are going to walk out throughout the course of the day. That gives me hope that we can be capable of building a solid resistance to Trump's agenda. And I want to say one really important thing. For those of you who watched Trump's speech, he said he's going to follow the righteous path, that he is going to remember all the forgotten men and women, that he's going to create good jobs and good schools, great schools for everybody, and that his government will be the government for the people. I want to urge everyone to see through these words and understand that Donald Trump is a liar, he's a con man, he is not going to stand for the interest of ordinary working people, of young people, of students, of the 99%, certainly not the interests of women and people of color and immigrants. We need to remember that the only way we can fight for our rights and expand our existing rights is to build a movement from below against him. Keep in mind his entire cabinet is full of multi-billionaires who have decades-long history of being deeply hostile to workers and young people. So I'm here with the young people who walked out. We are going to be demanding free education for all. We're going to use this weekend as a starting point for building a mass nonviolent civil disobedience.
So let me ask you this, because you brought up workers being a part of the rally today. And obviously workers were part of the contingency that brought President Trump to power. So what about all of those people today who are celebrating, feeling like their voices were not heard in the way you're saying the folks that you're representing were not heard? And who is being heard and who's not being heard in your opinion? Because obviously there are people who disagree with you.
No, that's a very important question. And in fact, I urge people who disagree with me to talk to me. Let's have open conversations. Let's have frank debates about which way the society should go. And is Donald Trump going to be the way for a decent society? I mean, first of all, if you look at the election results and the approval ratings that Trump has walked into the White House with, these are the lowest approval ratings, around 40%, lowest approval ratings for any U.S. president in U.S. history, which means that the majority of American working people do not support him. But for those working people, and I know there are many of those who voted for him because they are angry at corporate politics, at the domination of Wall Street in Washington, D.C. and throughout America, they are, they are right in their observation that the status quo of American politics has been advocating for the greed of Wall Street and not for the needs of ordinary people. But my message to them is that if you put your faith in Donald Trump, he is going to betray you. And he's going to stab you in the back because he got your votes, and he's not going to create jobs for you. He's not going to create those good schools. Those people who voted for Trump because they thought he's going to drain the swamp, I would urge them, look at his billionaire-dominated cabinet. This is no different. This is only worse than before. So if they want good jobs, if they want good schools, if they want access to a decent living standard, they should join our movement.
Let me ask you this too. As I've been talking to people who are organizing many of these rallies over the weekend, they're saying part of the plan and sort of mission of this organizing is to connect people who want to get involved with organizations that have needed activists for quite a long time, and this is the first time they're really starting to get some attention. Is that something that you're also participating in, connecting people? I've heard the word firewall, a firewall around certain organizations that folks are afraid may take a hit under this administration. What about that?
I think it's very important that you talked about the firewall. I mean, another way to describe it is to do everything in our power. We're in Seattle right now. Let's do everything in our power to build a mass mobilization from below to ensure that Seattle is a truly sanctuary city, which means building a wall of resistance to protect the rights of immigrants, the rights of women, all people of color, black and brown people, the rights of the LGBTQ community, the rights of low-income workers who are struggling to get by, which means that we need to make housing affordable in the city. But, beyond all of that, I think you also touched on a very important point, which is that right now, tons of young people, millennials, who do not accept the system as a just system, correctly so, are looking for avenues. They are looking for organizations to join. They're looking for strategies to fight back, which is why I would urge them to check out Socialist Alternative and specifically Socialist Students. We have our table here, and many of our members of Socialist Students are students on these campuses who are building Socialist Students Club across the city. So I would urge, if you are in a high school or college in Seattle, contact Socialist Alternative, contact Socialist Students, join our movement to build a different kind of society than what Trump promises.
Last question. I see a lot of signs around here that say, "Not my president." He was inaugurated today. He is the president of the United States. Does that ever change? Do people ever get to the point where they say, okay, he's my president and I'm going to try to work within the system and move it? Or no? Do we go 4 more years and are we going to continue seeing rallies like this, protests like this, where people just refuse to acknowledge his position?
Well, I think, yes, he has been inaugurated president, and we can, go into why that happened. But the reality is that Trump is espousing a deeply horrific vision for American society. It is based in a disgusting misogyny and sexism, hatred, vile hatred against immigrants and people of color and the LGBTQ community. And he is getting ready, his cabinet is getting ready to launch huge assaults on the working class in America. So we should not only be saying, "Not my president," with a sense of duty, we should be saying it with as a matter of pride. We should be proud of resisting that kind of right-wing hate and bigotry. We stand for a different vision of society, and it is not a time to be shy about a decent society, a vision for a decent society. And ultimately, unless we build this fight back, he will do what he has promised to do, which is really launch a vicious assault on immigrants, Muslims, people of color, and he is getting ready to nominate a Supreme Court justice who is going to be a right-wing zealot who will go after abortion rights. Are we going to accept that? Of course not. We are going to not only protect Planned Parenthood, but we're going to fight to expand women's rights. And for those people who may have a legitimate question out there, if you're listening to me and you wonder, do protests work? Can we do anything to change what's happened? You can. You bet we can. I'll give you one concrete example to end my point. Richard Nixon, in the past, he was one of the most right-wing presidents. He was a sexist, bigot, warmongering president, and yet, on paper, Richard Nixon appears as the most progressive president in U.S. history. During his reign, the Vietnam War was ended, the Environmental Protection Agency was formed, workplace rights were achieved, and abortion rights were won. All this happened not because he supported it, he was deeply opposed to all of this, but it happened because people refused to accept the status quo. Movements built from below, and the movements realized that they could not remain tied to the corporate parties and the corporate politicians of both parties, and they built independent of corporate politics, and that's how they were able to achieve historic victories. It can be done again today.